How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lo4f, and today I'm going to go and do the second contract of the two I had unlocked. It's part of the two you need to unlock the locating the fire monster or something, which is to get the new dairy. Yeah, so this one's called Exploring the Burned Out Infrastructure. In theory, it's pretty simple. I've drawn a long wiggly line going around. There might be other shortcuts, like for example, I could go up that road and kind of cut across that waterfall there and connect back up there, but as it's a new map and yeah, seeing how the vehicles are handling it and stuff, I'll go sort of the wiggly longer route. Yeah, you've got to get to Zone 1, then Zone 2, then Zone 3, then Zone 4, so you've not got to get any cargo or anything, and I figured it was unlocking that gateway. I'll get to that kind of later in the video, but long story short, it isn't. There's another gateway on the map that's kind of on the left-hand side of the map that is not very clear. Again, I'll sort of get into details a bit later in the video. Yeah, for this one, I decided, since it's a Canadian map, got the old maple leaf up on the trailer store, and we've got a goddamn professional on the roof of the garage in maple leaf red. Yeah, I thought I'd go and take one of the Canadian vehicles, so like the Pacific kind of vehicles, to be Pacific. So yeah, that was my my thoughts behind it. That's why I ended up picking the P512PF in the end. I suppose it was a choice between that or the P12 or the P16. The P12, I've never been much of a fan of, to be honest. I really like it as my crane vehicle that I usually have in garages, although at the minute I've got a Zix 605R, and that was just because I wasn't able to build a P12, as I didn't have the garage unlocked at that point. Yeah, the P16, I was kind of hoping to take that on some other mission with a bit more kind of hauling capability, since unless they've changed it or how it's reacting to the way they've coded this map, I've always liked the P16, so yeah, I ended up settling on this one. And the first thing I noticed is the turning circle on it is pretty damn horrific, to say the least. I think in the end I kind of worked out that it's probably because it's not all-wheel drive, so there's no power going to the front wheels. I mean, there's a good job I hit that curb, otherwise I wouldn't have made that corner either. Yeah, I think because it's only powered from the rear wheels, it's essentially just making it understeer a lot, because even though you're steering, it's just kind of being pushed from the back and the front's just skidding along. And yeah, if it had all-wheel drive, at least the front wheels, kind of when you turn them, they'd bite down a bit, and because they've got their own power going through them, it'd kind of pull the front end round the corner. But as that's not really happening, yeah, you can see I didn't really realise, or I don't know, I suppose I've not driven this truck for a little while, but yeah, how bad it was. I was missing all sorts of corners. So yeah, that's why I keep crashing into everything at the minute. It's just a much wider turning circle than I was expecting. And then now as well, obviously, I was like, oh no, it's not a good sign. It got bogged down a bit. To be fair, as I was driving around this map, the vast majority of places it kind of lets you go at a pretty reasonable pace. If you've got like the high range gearbox and all the rest of it, if you stick it in high range, it plows along pretty nicely. You get little patches like what I just encountered there, where it just suddenly slows you down. But again, as this thing hasn't got all-wheel drive, the front's never kind of putting any effort in, so you're always just relying on the rear wheels. Which, as far as I know with this P512PF, it's got its own custom version of wheels, which I believe have more grip than like the usual category they'd sit in. Yeah, here and there they just kind of let you down a little bit, but for the most part they're alright. And then I suppose the last issue with this truck that you can kind of see keeps nearly happening is yeah, it's a little bit too tippy. It'd kind of be nice by now if they gave this truck a little bit of an overhaul, because there's some things I do really like about it. I kind of said before, it's a little bit like a baby version of the P16, but the two big differences, like one, the P16 just isn't as tippy, and two, because the P16 weighs so much more, it just plants itself into the ground so well, and as I've said before, it sort of generates its own grip from how heavy it is, whereas this thing is just more like the other usual trucks where the weight doesn't really seem to feel like it's there, and if there is, it's too high up in this vehicle, so it boats around a lot. And I know I've got like a loaf in the sideboard and all that, but it's a truck at the end of the day, so if the only way to stop it tipping over is to have no loaf in the back, have no sideboard, have no crane, and keep all the weight low, it's at that point it's kind of a pretty useless truck that's not really being used as a truck. So yeah, it'd be nice if they lowered the weight a little bit, especially as this is a Canadian map as well, or both of them, so as these are now on home soil, I was hoping they'd fare a little better. But apart from that, it's certainly, so far, the map, I'm still liking it a lot. Again, it's, yeah, I'll need to kind of play it a little bit more before I fully figure it out, but looks wise and all the rest of it, I'd say it's probably one of my favourite maps already. I've always liked Black River on Michigan specifically, but Smithville Dam was pretty cool as well. The other ones, Drummond Island and the Island Lake or something, whatever it was, not as much of a fan of those, partly because they don't have a garage on them, so every time you had to do a mission on them, you had to keep driving everything over, and that's already eating up a lot of your sort of time and enthusiasm by the time you get there. But yeah, Black River specifically, I've always really liked that map, and like I said, this gives me quite a lot of similar vibes to it, so yeah, looks wise, the trees all look good, the views look good, and as I said, for the most part, you can see now I'm in high gear and it's ticking along pretty nicely, so they've not overly punished it everywhere. Like I say, there is a pretty good mix going on with this game. I will say, from like this mission as an example, I suppose it depends where you got to go on the map, but I'm essentially cutting over from like the garage on the right over to the left to zone 1, 2, 3 and 4 for this mission. There's not necessarily a very direct route, hence why I ended up drawing a bit of a wiggly snaky path going along the map, which is not the end of the world. Like I said, there's certain things, there's a road running up kind of north and then curves over to the middle of the map, eventually goes to that gateway in the north of the map that's like a solid road and all the rest of it. So there's a bridge out at the minute, which I need to get that fixed at some point, which I will do pretty soon, but there's just other missions and other videos I kind of want to prioritise over just doing a random like fix a broken bridge mission. So yeah, I've sort of not got round to that yet, but once I've got that done, I suppose that'll help you travel around a little bit more. And until doing this mission today, I didn't even realise that there was 2 gateways. I just thought it was the one at the top of the map. And yeah, driving this, like I said, that's what I noticed mostly. You get like, this is not too bad because it's a little boggy swamp area, so kind of expect it to slow me down a little bit. At least you can go low range with the diffs on. And yeah, it's pretty slow going, but crawl out there eventually. But yeah, the big issue with this truck as I was driving was just the fact that it feels very tippy. Quite often, even if you don't actually tip, you kind of have to let go of the steering, otherwise if you keep steering around a corner, you sort of know it'll eventually go. So you end up being kind of imprecise and bumping around all over the place just because you're trying to kind of cancel the steering before you fly over. It's kind of crabbing up that hill a little bit there. And then I'm hoping as well, like originally tonight I wanted to try and get a couple of missions and videos cranked out, but this one for a start ended up taking a little bit longer than I was planning. And yeah, then my brother rang for a bit, so I was speaking to him. I spoke to our mum earlier as well. My granddad apparently is feeling a bit better today, so it's good news. See, again, you hit little patches like that that are a little bit iffy. And yeah, at some point I should drive past as well this dairy. I can't remember the code name it's given it. It kind of looks like the Off-Road Dolphin's bigger brother. Yeah, when I was exploring the map, I must have gone right past it. I don't know how the hell I didn't see it. But it's there, pretty much in the middle of the map. And like I say, you have to do the mission I did yesterday where I restored the garage, which I think is a pretty important, worthwhile one to do first anyway, just because that gives you then the proper use of the garage. Yeah, there's the truck kind of on my left, poking out of the swamp on its side. And the mission or contract is called something like locating the fire monster. So you have to do like yesterday's mission called Service Centre, and then this mission as well, which was exploring the burned out infrastructure. And once you've got both those done, it unlocks quite a few missions after that, actually. It unlocks like all 4 of the water tower missions, and a few others as well, and on the other sets of contracts. So yeah, it's definitely worth getting these out of the way sooner rather than later. That was just an edit in the video though. That's when I was speaking to my mum, see how my granddad was. So just yeah, quickly save the footage, edit that out. And that's it. I've just drove through zone 1, so it's just going to basically make you weave and wind your way around this map, going through all this stuff really, like The burnt out trees. I assume, because I just went past a warehouse thing that was kind of burnt out, that that's the idea of this mission. You're just kind of checking out all the burnt out, broken warehouses, really, which I'm guessing at some point in the near future will be the missions to restore all of those. I actually quite like the look of this, though, even like with the forest fire that swept through and burnt everything away. Sort of, even though there are trees there, they're actually kind of clear a little bit. You can still see through them, see what's going on. I did actually get stuck at, so I can see there's a tree stump there on the left. I got stuck on a tree stump earlier, which I believe was like a burned out tree stump. You can barely see the bloody thing. So that's zone 2, so that must be on my right. There's another warehouse that's all kind of, yeah, dilapidated. Oh, in fact, yeah, this is where I'm going to cut across. I could have carried on going straight ahead now and kind of cut round the long way on the road, but as I was eyeballing the map, it looked like it was possible to go this way and squeeze through the trees, so I wanted to know, to find out one way or another. In fact, yeah, it might be now, where there's this tree stump. But as you can see when I zoom in, it barely looks like a little twiglet, because there, you can't even really tell. It's sort of, well, yeah, I assume it's what was supposed to be like a burnt out tree, and it's just the last little bit sticking up, but they're definitely kind of making them harder to spot. Thankfully, they hadn't absolutely lined the place left, right and centre with them. There's certainly quite a few down trees, but so far, touch wood. Yeah, well, you can see there, like, that tree flicked up. They're not catching like they were on Phase 8. I did hit that one, though. That was a unkillable tree. But in the end, cutting through the forest kind of worked out nicely. Like I said, it wasn't a complete punishment for trying to save a little bit of time and distance. This truck's taking a little bit of a beating. I think, yeah, well, I went through the bumpers. I'm still on the stock bumper on this one, but none of the others really sit any higher or anything anyway, but I sort of did notice tonight this thing does catch quite a few things. Instead of just bouncing over them, it kind of hooks in with the front bumper and stops you dead. As you can see though, driving down all these roads, they're yeah, fairly reasonable. You get a few boggy patches there as well, like when there's water on it, but I'm glad it's not a complete punishment, because the map itself is actually a pretty big map, so if they kind of made it as slow as, you know, Imandra and that sort of stuff was, or Yukon, what's it called, Flooded Foothills or something, yeah, it'd be, I could see it getting boring quite quick. So I've just got zone 3 now, and then it pretty much, it wants you to double back on yourself, which is part of the reason as well why I ended up just cutting through the countryside, so saved going down the same roads twice, really. I noticed earlier as well, random, it's not really related to this mission specifically, but when you go through the add-ons, as I said, now there's like a water tank add-on that basically looks the same as the fuel add-on, but it's got water in it, which we're going to have to go and deliver to various locations as part of the contracts. But I noticed it's funny that the weight of those tanks, even though they're the same size as the fuel add-ons and all the rest of it, and within reason you'd think they'd be similar weight, but they don't crunch the suspension down like the fuel does, so I'm surprised they didn't correct the fuel while they're at it. And then this is the last location. I assume it's like a rail yard. Pretty low payment on this mission though, 2,000, which is I know you're only driving around, but yeah, it's pretty cheap. Says a little thing like it's not looking good, but thanks for driving around. And then, like I say, at this point it says gateway unlocked. Don't do what I did, because I ended up driving all the way to the gateway at the north of the map. Thought I'd press X now, or square or whatever, and then it brought up a message saying it's blocked me. And I was thinking, what the hell's going on? I even quit and reloaded my game and all sorts. The gateway is there, that's on the left hand side of the map, and I'm pretty sure I drove past it yesterday, but apparently it was like not quite uncovered, so it wasn't even showing up on the map. So then I drove there just to make sure, but then to kind of get the video flowing a bit better, I drove back to here where I just finished the mission, and then drew a line like to that gateway. Now it's actually showing up on the map. And at this point I will say I was yeah, kind of out of patience because I was hoping to get this mission done a lot quicker and simpler, and yeah, ended up being a bit of a pain in the ass. A couple of quit and reloads, quite a bit of scratching my head, looking around the map, wondering what the hell's going on, if it's glitched or something. And then now, just after I turn around, this thing tipped. And I mean, again, it's a good job I brought a goddamn professional with me. So I managed to escape with a loaf. And at this point, I'd kind of had enough of this truck, because like I say, it was a bit too on the boaty side and all the rest of it. So at first, instead of even rescuing it, I just started driving off. I was like, sod you, I'll go to the gateway myself. But then I kind of thought, well, the video will be a little bit choppy and all the rest of it. So then I did a U-turn and came back. I thought, fine, I'll rescue it, otherwise it's only just going to be a P512PF sat in that road on its side, kind of blocking my way anyway. So yeah, it was lucky though, it was bloody close to being left. And I mean, again, get yourself a loaf. He's a beast, he saved me. See, something as simple as that though, if I didn't have the loaf with me, I would have had to have hit recover, go back to the garage, or send a vehicle to come and rescue me. It's, I mean, same difference at that point. I may as well just recover to the garage and drive back to where I am with the truck anyway. So yeah, just as and when people still ask me, like, why do I take a loaf with me all the time? Stuff like that is basically, it's an extra life, an extra chance to carry on the footage really and rescue myself. And then at this point it tipped. So I didn't even attempt, I just hit quit and reload again. It loaded me back up to there where I just saved myself originally with the loaf. So yeah, attempt number, God knows how many now, 3 or 4 by now. Not just because of the tipping, but like I said, I drove over there to see if it is an actual gateway that exists and all sorts. This ended up taking me way longer than I was planning on. I think I must have clipped that rock on the left and it, yeah, flicked my suspension pretty hard and I went. I mean, to be fair, when I completed this mission it said gateway unlocked. It'd be nice if it showed up on the map. It was the fact that it just didn't even acknowledge that there was a second gateway on the map that I kind of thought, oh, it must be that one on the north. So yeah, we got it, it's this one instead. But just make sure, because the way they've designed the roads, like when you cut past them when I was originally exploring the map, you just miss it, so it wasn't uncovering it. That's the kind of thumbnail for Burned Forest. Looks pretty cool. You could see that new dairy kind of in the foreground. I don't know, it had some weird looking pallet things on it. It didn't have its like fire truck setup. And then yeah, there was a couple of other trucks in the background. One looked like it had tipped over. This is the map. Obviously not really going to go around and explore it or anything, because I'll save that for an actual exploration video. But just to sort of confirm for my own sanity that I can actually get through the gateway and get to that map. And then yeah, that's the thumbnail for this one, Albany River. It's like the little opening scene it does. I've seen someone saying the trees look like they were painted by a 5-year-old or something. I agree, but it must be, there's so many bloody trees on this map that it takes a while for them all to load. Eventually they kind of render in properly and yeah, they look normal. So yeah, that's this one done though. Like I say, this truck I think could do with a little overhaul on its tippiness and preferably all-wheel drive. But anyway, that's about it for today. I hope you've enjoyed, I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreon members. Get yourself a loaf because he's goddamn professional, and I'll be back soon.